In the rugged remoteness of the Colorado Territory in 1865, the biting wind screamed across the jagged peaks, swirling around weary travelers lost in a relentless march through snow-packed trails. The relentless elements whispered tales of harsh realities, and among these grim figures was 21-year-old Rosa Jimenez. With a patched shawl flapping around her shoulders like a frayed sail, she clutched her meager possessions, a threadbare blanket, a handful of dried roots, and a delicate locket that held a picture of her mother. These few items were her only connection to a past that felt increasingly distant. "She's nothing but a burden." The voice of her father, Fernando Jimenez, sliced through the frigid air like an icy dagger, more grating than the shrill gusts that whipped around them. He was a gaunt man, the lines etched deep into his weary face, speaking of long days and sleepless nights filled with desperate thoughts. Sunken cheeks and wild, unkempt hair, framed eyes that held a mixture of despair and resentment. Each word he spat was laced with bitterness, exposing a grave disappointment that bore down on Rosa's heart like the unforgiving wind. Next to him stood Lorenzo Delgado, a mountain man, towering like a sentinel over the desolate landscape. His rugged exterior, marked by years of survival against the harsh elements, contrasted starkly with Rosa's delicate frame. The lines of his weathered face were as unwavering as the peaks that surrounded them, and the dark depth of his eyes seemed to mirror both the land and its wildness, brimming with untamed power and unspeakable stories. "What do you have to offer in return, Jimenez?" Lorenzo's voice rumbled, gravelly and low, with a relentless calm that reflected the mountain range behind him. He regarded Rosa with an intensity that made her feel exposed and vulnerable, as if she were just a commodity rather than the flesh-and-blood daughter of Fernando. Please," Rosa stammered, her heart pounding in her chest like a war drum. The truth of their situation rushed around her like a suffocating fog. She measured her worth against her father's contempt, desperate to prove herself. "I can work. I can help. Just don't send me away like this." Panic laced her words, a plea drowned in disbelief. "Work," Fernando barked, the disdain in his voice cutting sharply, slicing through the din of the cold and the misery that surrounded them. "You're of no use to anyone, just another mouth to feed." Resentment dripped from each syllable as he regarded his daughter with moral clarity. It was easier for him to cast her aside than to continue bearing the weight of her presence. Rosa fought against the swell of despair threatening to engulf her. "No!" she cried out, her voice breaking beneath the pressure of her emotions, merging anguish with defiance. "I am not a commodity to be traded. I am a woman, not a cow." The wind whipped around her, echoing her thoughts as if nature itself conspired to reinforce her cry for agency. Lorenzo shifted his weight, assessing the situation with calm eyes, a flicker of curiosity igniting beneath his stoic exterior. "You'll be safer with me than you will be here," he finally said, his voice low and measured, offering a stark contrast to the fiery exchange bouncing between father and daughter. His gaze, steady and unwavering, held Rosa's attention. "Safer," she echoed, her hands trembling at her sides, disbelief flooding her voice. "You think safety on these mountains is worth my life?" Fear gripped Rosa's heart, wrapped tightly like a vine threatening to choke her. She turned to look at her father, her desperation mingling with hope. Was there a chance he would take her side, perhaps see her worth? But all she found were cold eyes, filled with indifference. "Take her," Fernando muttered, the contempt layered in his voice ringing like a death knell. "I have no use for her." With a wave of his hand, he dismissed her as if she were a tattered rag no longer needed. In that moment, Rosa felt as if the world had collapsed beneath her. A chasm had opened that swallowed her whole. She was not just losing her family, she was losing her identity. The biting cold of the Colorado Territory seeped into her bones, chilling her spirit at the harsh betrayal of her own blood, her own father. With a heavy heart, Rosa's feet began to move as if on their own, drawn to the mountain man standing before her, an embodiment of strength and survival. She stepped forward, a fragile figure casting herself into the unknown depths of a bleak future. The bitter wind stung her cheeks, but within her heart simmered a tempest of defiance, a plea for worth, a desperate desire to be seen beyond the burdens others had placed on her. Lorenzo extended a rough hand toward her, his grip firm, yet mindful. It was a lifeline thrown into the turbulent waters of her turmoil, and as she took that step closer, she caught a glimpse of something deep within his dark eyes, an understanding that perhaps transcended both words and landscapes. Yet the thought made her hesitate. What would it mean to be in the care of a stranger? "Come with me," he said, and as he turned, Rosa felt the chain of her past snapping behind her, fragments of her former life scattering like feathers in the wind. Each step she took away from her father felt like a liberation and a burden simultaneously, as if she was being drawn into a new world where everything was uncertain, but potential glimmered just ahead. Rosa dared a final glance back at her father, a silhouette against the bleak horizon. He stood rigid, faced away from her, already lost to this new reality as if she had never existed. The love of a father was non-existent in that moment, replaced with indifference, and Rosa's heart quaked beneath the weight of it, held hostage by the ache of abandonment. The cold wind rustled again, chilling her skin as the landscape began to shift. With every step toward unknown territory, Rosa held tightly onto the hope that perhaps within this rugged valley she could rediscover herself, that the scars of the past could, in time, transform into badges of resilience. "For what it's worth," Lorenzo said as they walked, breaking the silence, "this land has a way of revealing what we're truly made of." His tone was serious, an underlying conviction rippling beneath the surface. Rosa nodded, though uncertainty twisted in her stomach. For the first time in a long while, an ember of determination flickered within her chest. Perhaps one day she would no longer be seen as a burden, but as someone worthy, a woman capable of cultivating more than just the earth beneath her feet, but also her own identity. Together, they moved forward into the vast wilderness, with the weight of abandonment trailing behind, but a fragile thread of resilience beginning to weave itself into the fabric of her weary heart. As the mountains loomed overhead, Rosa felt a shift in her spirit, a tentative stirring that whispered of the journey ahead. Perhaps in the wild and rugged mystery of this unforgiving land, she would learn not only to survive, but to thrive. The sun dipped low on the horizon as Lorenzo guided Rosa through a narrow, winding trail flanked by towering pines. Each step caused the pine needles to release their fragrant aroma, mingling with the fresh, crisp cold of the mountain air. The path twisted like the swirling thoughts in Rosa's mind, each with the potential to lead her to a new beginning or a devastating end. "Keep close," Lorenzo instructed, his voice confident yet gentle, breaking the silence that hung heavily between them. Rosa felt a strange comfort in his directness, his no-nonsense demeanor somewhat grounding in the tempest of emotions swirling inside her. For all the unsettling unknowns that lay ahead, there was a flicker of something she had not felt in a long time: hope. As they progressed deeper into the mountains, the air grew colder and the landscape morphed around them, showcasing majestic heights rising above the tree line, rocks giving way to rugged cliffs scattered with patches of snow that hadn't yet melted. Rosa's breath misted in front of her, a silent testament to the biting chill that nipped at her resolve. And yet, something within her was awakening. "What's your name?" Lorenzo asked, glancing to Rosa with an eyebrow raised, his curiosity evident but his voice steady. It was a simple question, yet it felt monumental in its significance. She realized at that moment that he was truly interested in her. "Rosa," she replied, a breath of reluctance slipping from her lips. "Rosa Jimenez." The name seemed almost foreign to her now, fraught with the weight of her past. Would it ever stop echoing with the taints of rejection and sorrow? "Rosa," he repeated, as if tasting the name, weighing it against the backdrop of the mountains, deciding where it fit in the tapestry of existence and survival. "Good to know you, Rosa." They continued along the trail, the rhythmic crunch of boots against gravel and snow the only sound filling the frosty air. After what felt like miles, they stumbled upon a clearing that opened up before them like a pocket of sunlight in an overcast sky. At the center stood a modest but sturdy cabin, its logs weathered yet resilient as if crafted by the land itself. Homely smoke curled lazily from the chimney, while snowflakes danced silently around it, a vision that drew Rosa in, promising warmth and renewed life. "This is home," Lorenzo announced, gesturing to the cabin. Relief washed over Rosa, stirring a feeling she had thought long gone. "You'll help me here, and I'll make sure you have everything you need." "What kind of work will I be doing?" she asked, her voice uneven, a blend of trepidation and curiosity. She still carried the weight of her past, the burdens of worthlessness engraved deeply into her thoughts, but perhaps here she could forge her own destiny. "Building, cleaning, tending the animals, and helping with the garden when the weather breaks. And you'll learn, too, how to survive in these mountains." As she heard the mention of learning, something ignited within her. The fair chance to grow, not just to exist. This was an opportunity she hadn't allowed herself to dream about. "Learning?" she echoed, her heart racing with possibility. "What do I need to know? Survival here is a skill," he explained thoughtfully, his hands resting on his hips, posture relaxed yet commanding. "There's patience in hunting, wisdom in gathering, and knowledge in the land itself. You'll need to know what's edible, what can be used for shelter, and how to find your way when the snows cover the trails." He moved closer, his dark eyes holding hers with a steady intensity. "But more than that, you'll need to discover your own worth outside the chains others placed upon you." The words reverberated deep within Rosa, each syllable forging another strand of resilience into her being. "Why do you care?" Rosa blurted, her heart racing. "You hardly know me." Lorenzo's brow furrowed, a momentary flicker of sadness crossing his features. "I know what it's like to feel lost." He crossed his arms, an uncharacteristic vulnerability emerging as he continued. "I lost my family, my position in a world that no longer reckoned me worthy after an accident. The mountains took my wife, and for a long time I was just a ghost wandering among the trees." The confession settled heavy in the air, creating an unexpected bond between them. "I didn't mean to pry," Rosa murmured, swallowing hard. "I hate to burden you with my troubles." "You're not a burden, Rosa. You're a person. Don't ever forget that." Lorenzo's voice softened, and in that moment, Rosa sensed a truth she had long been denied, the worth that lay dormant within her. They entered the cabin, a simple yet inviting space with a warm hearth at the center. The air inside was tinged with the scent of wood smoke and whispers of spices long rooted. A small table lay ready for meals, surrounded by modest furnishings, but imbued with character. This cabin felt like a sanctuary, a subtle promise of acceptance. Lorenzo gestured toward a corner where a warm fire crackled, illuminating the room in gentle hues. "You'll find comfort here, but it's up to you to make it a home." "What do you expect of me?" she asked, a seriousness resonating in her tone as she studied the mountain man, who stood with a mixture of strength and compassion. She wanted to be useful, to prove that she was worthy of this chance. "Earn your keep as you see fit," he replied, nodding lightly as he moved toward the hearth. "Help with daily tasks, but also occupy a space in this world free from judgment. The way you choose to navigate that will shape your new life." A growing excitement thrummed through Rosa as she envisioned the possibilities before her. For too long had she lived under the oppressive weight of expectations. Now she saw doors opening where there had been none, and resilience blossoming in the fertile ground that Lorenzo had offered her. "What about the outside world? What if—" she began, but he interrupted. "Out there, you'll encounter people who recall the past, but here, you have the chance to define yourself anew," he said firmly, determination radiating from him. "Don't let the ghosts of those who treated you poorly consume you. You're more than the judgment of others." For the first time in a long while, Rosa felt the stirrings of possibility within her heart, as if the mountains themselves conspired to transform her pain into purpose. Days merged slowly into a rhythm, filled with simple challenges that pushed Rosa to her limits. She navigated the delicate balance of survival, learning the nuances of her new world with each interaction. She gathered kindling, tended to the animals, and absorbed Lorenzo's lessons on life in the wilderness, like a parched plant drinking in rain. As time passed, Rosa found herself exhaling the weight of her previous life, settling into the nurturing embrace of this untamed land. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting long shadows, Lorenzo returned from a hunt, dragging a deer across the threshold. "Dinner," he announced, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. With a mix of awe and trepidation, Rosa watched as he expertly began to dress the animal, a chore that had been foreign to her but was rapidly becoming familiar. Something inside her, perhaps it was newfound strength, spurred her to join him, shoving aside her hesitation. "Here, hold this," Lorenzo instructed, handing her a knife. Under his watchful gaze, she took a steadying breath, steeling herself for the task. As they prepared the evening meal together, sharing laughter and stories by the fire, the cabin filled with warmth that transcended the soothing heat of the flames. Her laughter sang openly in the space between them, weaving in and out of the tales Lorenzo told, and for the first time in forever, Rosa felt alive, a part of something larger and more benevolent than she'd ever imagined possible. "You're a natural," he remarked, his eyes sparkling with a playful pride. "Maybe I'm just getting lucky," she said, wiping her brow and glancing at him, emboldened. "What other skills do I need to master?" "Patience, for one," he smirked, tossing her a light-hearted glance. "Every creature requires consideration if you hope to thrive." As Rosa looked into his eyes, deepening their connection, a tremor of hope began to flourish within her soul. This rugged mountain man had opened doors she never knew existed, urging her toward self-discovery and profound truth. The resilience buried within her was no longer a secret. It was a tangible force, driving her forward on a path she had once only dreamed possible. But in the shadows of their bond, a weighty truth lingered in the cold air. An ever-looming specter of violence and judgment had not yet fully vanished from Rosa's life, a reminder that their pasts were intertwined like the gnarled roots of ancient trees. The time would come, she sensed it with growing urgency, when she would have to confront it. As winter began to thaw and spring approached on the distant horizon, she felt certain that challenges lay ahead. And yet, she would face them head-on, not as a burden, not merely surviving, but as a woman who was learning to embrace her worth, forming her identity with the strength only testing could reveal. In the glow of the fire, she smiled at Lorenzo, feeling the gentle rush of hope igniting within her. Perhaps in a world thick with obstacles, she could emerge unbroken, a force of resilience to be reckoned with, alive in a land that had finally embraced her. As the vibrant tendrils of spring turned into summer, the sun's warm embrace settled over the Colorado territory, filling the landscape with lush hues and fragrant blooms. Rosa Jimenez was transforming just as rapidly as the world around her, casting away remnants of despair and emerging into a life brimming with purpose and vitality. With each dawn, the rising sun unveiled new opportunities for learning and growth. The cabin transformed into a hub of activity as Rosa worked to cultivate their garden. It was more than just a patch of land. It was a testament to her resilience, a canvas where she painted her essence through every seed planted and every weed pulled. Rosa reveled in the joy of planting, the vibrant earth yielding to her hands as tendrils of beans and leafy greens burst forth from the ground beneath her fingertips. The insects hummed a lively symphony around her as bees flitted among flowers, and the air hummed with life, invigorating her soul. "Look at this one," she called out one afternoon, rushing toward Lorenzo, her heart racing with excitement as she held up a young tomato plant, soft green leaves reaching toward the sky. "See how it's reaching for the sun?" Lorenzo replied, wiping his brow with a roll of his sleeve. "Just like you, Rosa. Keep reaching." His words struck deep, resonating through her as she felt a glow of recognition swell within her. It wasn't merely about survival anymore. It was about flourishing, about sowing seeds of hope in her heart, while trusted hands helped nurture the vision. Days morphed seamlessly into weeks. They built up the garden into a verdant oasis, a stark contrast against the rugged landscape of the mountains, each day witnessing a tapestry of growth and color that mirrored their bond. And with every new plant, Rosa felt herself shedding more of the ashes of her former life, stepping forward into the sunlight with renewed strength. But this journey wasn't without challenges. One evening, as summer's heat began to wane, Rosa found herself faced with unforeseen setbacks. A series of storms descended upon the mountains, fierce rains pounding the cabin, swelling the streams to tumultuous torrents. Despite their preparations, floods surged over the ground, threatening the tender seedlings that had just emerged. "Quickly, we need to move the more vulnerable plants," Lorenzo shouted over the roar of rain, urgency etched across his face. They thrust into action, scrambling in the chaos to protect their hard-won harvest. Peruvians of newfound skills and confidence surged through Rosa as she lifted plants with eager hands, racing against the elements. As the downpour subsided, a tense silence followed, punctuated only by the sound of dripping water. Glistening earth greeted their eyes, and as they stood amidst the battered remnants of their efforts, Rosa's heart sank. "I thought we were doing everything right." Her voice trembled as disappointment washed over her. Lorenzo placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, concern etched across his brow. "It's the way of nature, Rosa. It tests our resolve, but the labor we've put in won't go to waste. In times of trouble, we grow stronger." His conviction reignited the flicker of determination in her heart. "You're right. We'll rebuild, won't we?" she vowed, her spirit flowing back to the surface. They began again, designing barriers and installing drainage to control future floods, and Rosa personally took it upon herself to propagate new seedlings, nurturing them in pots while rescuing and reinforcing the ones that had weathered the storm. Each setback merely led them deeper toward understanding their surroundings, revealing the delicate balance necessary to thrive in this wild territory. And as the garden flourished anew, so too did Rosa. Confidence bloomed alongside her plants, and her laughter, once a distant melody, rang freely through the cabin as they created more moments of joy together. They churned up hearty meals from their bounty, sharing stories while kneading bread or cooking wild game. She savored the warmth of companionship, and the light returned to her eyes, scattering the shadows of her past like seeds scattered to the wind. One crisp evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, Lorenzo brought forth a small gift from his hunting bag. "Here, something for you," he said, handing her a colorful woven bracelet made from natural fibers and tiny beads. Rosa blinked in surprise. "What's this for?" "To celebrate your strengths and growth. You've come a long way, Rosa." He gestured around, encompassing the cabin and the garden. "You deserve to wear a reminder of your journey." Her heart swelled as she slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. "Thank you, Lorenzo. It's beautiful." The significance of having that token brought a deeper understanding of the bond they shared. Each color and bead symbolized hard work, unwavering trust, and a sense of belonging she had fought so hard to reclaim. As the week passed, they ventured into town for supplies, an expedition Rosa had rarely seen outside of her memories of the past. It was a small town, filled with locals going about their daily routines, laughter and chatter mixing into the air like the heady aroma of fresh-baked goods wafting from the local bakery. Lorenzo took her hand gently and led her through the busy streets. "Remember, when you enter that space, you are not what they once made you believe," he cautioned softly. "You're stronger than they ever knew." With a surge of courage, Rosa stepped into the bustle of the town, her shoulders squared, their closeness fortifying her against any unwelcome stares. News of her achievements in the mountains wouldn't go unnoticed, she thought. As they navigated between vendors, Rosa found herself drawn to a flower stall overflowing with fragrant blooms. She gently picked up a wildflower bouquet to admire its beauty, tendrils of lilac, deep violets, and bright yellows mingling together. The sight ignited her heart as colors danced vibrantly within her memory. "Now, that's a fantastic selection," the vendor grinned, making eye contact. "Aren't those from the ranges nearby?" "Yes, they are," Rosa began, a flutter of familiarity and connection weaving into her words. "And you're a part of this now," the vendor added, the warmth in his tone taking her by surprise. "Word travels fast. We've heard of the wonderful work you've done at the cabin." A sudden flush of pride raced through her, blooming bright beneath the vendor's words. The validation felt divine, a sunbeam igniting in her chest, and as Lorenzo watched her interact, a proud smile crept onto his face. In that moment, past ghosts faded into whispers. She possessed more than strength. She was a vibrant part of this world, carving her place among the living, laughing and celebrating life. Rosa watched each person around her with new eyes and a burgeoning heart, a swirling acknowledgement of belonging intertwining with the land and community. Back at the cabin later, they settled into the fading light, and the flowers adorned the tabletop, a burst of color against the wood. "They're lovely," Lorenzo declared, giving the arrangement a nod of approval. "You can teach them to thrive too, just like you." With the quiet joys she had crafted and the pride in discovering who she truly was, Rosa started sharing her experience of the mountains, how the herbs and wildflowers had shades of untamable strength hiding within their delicate frames, just like her. "Sometimes," she whispered, reflecting in the orange glow of the dying sun, "the quiet, gentle things have the most power." As the summer wore on, the world bloomed around them, yet beneath the beauty of life promising a fresh start, darker memories lurked in the corners of her mind, challenging her newfound joy. The shadows began stirring, ominous memories clouding her once clear heart. Each rustle of wind carried a reminder of her past, a fear that loomed like a predator on the fringes of the forest. One balmy night, a distant shout echoed through the valley, loud and penetrating, striking her with a chill. Panic ignited as alarm swept through her, fluttering like a restless bird. "What was that?" she asked, shooting panic-laden eyes to Lorenzo. "It's probably the men from the neighboring camp. Nothing to worry about." But uncertainty hinged in his voice as they both strained to listen to the raucous sounds reaching them. Yet restlessness gnawed at Rosa. "We should see who it is, shouldn't we?" Her curiosity mingled with dread, knowing that the past could resurface unexpectedly. Lorenzo watched her with concern, and he mustered a reassurance she desperately needed. "Even if the past does come knocking, you're not that girl anymore, Rosa. You can face whatever comes your way." With his words echoing in her heart, she thought that she could be resilient, just as the wildflowers re-emerged each spring, unfurling with renewed strength. Together, they stepped beyond the cabin, into the pulse of the valley where dusk was wrapping around the earth like an embrace. As they approached the sounds, a figure appeared along the path. It was a group of men from the camp, joyfully shouting and laughing in the twilight. Relief flooded over Rosa like the cool mountain air. They were just sharing tales, throwing laughs over a night filled with camaraderie and revelry, their merriment carrying through the trees like a festival. "What were you worried about?" Lorenzo chuckled beside her, his voice low and warm against the crackle of the fire beyond. "You know, just because the past may chase you doesn't mean you can't outrun it." Rosa turned to look at him, a flicker in her heart as her eyes shimmered with possibility. "I needed to hear that tonight," she admitted softly, gratitude swelling within her. "Let them roar and celebrate." Lorenzo gestured toward the camp. "We'll continue our dance with nature. After all, we've built something spectacular together in this land." As they returned to the comforting glow of their cabin, the laughter faded into the distance, and Rosa found peace in the simple sound of the trees rustling under the stars. The fears that often gripped her heart were slowly slipping away, like mist dispersing at dawn. Rosa realized then she would never again be confined to the silence of her past. She had transformed, her spirit lighter, her bonds stronger, and her life reborn among the beauty of the Colorado mountains. As the first stars began to twinkle overhead, she turned to Lorenzo, a smile breaking across her features, and demanded, "Promise me something." "What's that?" he asked. "Promise me you won't ever let me forget how to thrive." Her tone radiated sincerity, a powerful grace resonating between them like a bridge spanning into the wilderness. "I promise, Rosa. I'll always remind you to reach for the sun." Together they held each other's gaze, their unspoken bond intertwining as branches of a tree, strong, alive, and unwavering. For the first time in her life, Rosa felt wholly grounded in the present, taking each breath with a heart that's learned to embrace all aspects of itself, the light, the shadow, and the beauty found in between. As the green and vibrant summer days turned to warm golden hues of autumn, Rosa Jimenez thrived in her new reality, anchored by the beauty of the wild Colorado mountains and the steady companionship of Lorenzo. Each day brought opportunities for growth and learning, and Rosa stepped forward with newfound confidence, embracing the land's rhythm as if it had become a part of her very essence. Within the warmth of their small cabin, Rosa found not just shelter, but a growing sense of family. The garden, once a patch of struggle, had transformed into a resplendent oasis, overflowing with produce that nourished their bodies and spirits. Yet, as the freshness of summer began to give way to the crispness of approaching winter, Rosa felt a flicker of uncertainty creep into her heart, a dimming shadow whispering of change. One crisp morning, bathed in the golden light of dawn, she knelt in their garden, carefully gathering the last remnants of their bounty. "Lorenzo," she called out, excitement bubbling in her voice. "Look at these tomatoes. They're perfect for salsa." He emerged from the cabin, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, a smile stretching across his sun-kissed face. "Perfect indeed, Rosa. Nothing beats homegrown." As they prepared a meal rich with their harvest, laughter filled the air, a melody that underscored their life together. With each slice of tomato and sprig of herbs, Rosa felt the moments between them weave into a tapestry of memories. "Remember our first meal together?" Lorenzo asked, his eyes sparkling with delight as he recalled the burnt bread and undercooked stew. "Hard to forget," Rosa chuckled, shaking her head. "I thought we might starve." "That's just the rough start of our culinary journey," he teased, his voice playful. "Now look at us, a full spread of perfectly ripened fruits ready to celebrate." As they shared their meal, the long shadows of the day began creeping toward them, and in the quiet moments between bites, Rosa felt the weight of unvoiced emotions rest heavily in the air. "Lorenzo," she ventured cautiously, her heart racing, "do you ever think about what happens next? After all, the seasons change. Winter is coming." He looked at her keenly, taking his time to respond, allowing the moment to stretch into silence. "I think about it often," he admitted. "But I believe in leaning into the seasons, embracing whatever comes our way." Rosa felt a knot tighten in her stomach. What if the change isn't just the weather? It could mean visitors or threats. I haven't forgotten about my father. The shadow of him loomed larger in her mind, inching its way back into the spaces she thought were safe. His expression softened with understanding, a gentleness wrapping around her words. "The past may find its way back in the most unexpected ways," he assured her. "But you've learned to stand, to fight for what you have now. That's what's important." His encouragement pierced her heart with warmth, yet the shadows danced around her mind, weighed by the memories of that fear. "But can the hurt truly be left in the past?" she whispered. "What if it finds me, and I falter?" He reached across the table and grasped her hand firmly, grounding her through the uncertainty. "You are not defined by your past, Rosa. You have forged your identity through choices, through this land." His gaze locked onto hers, a connection blossoming in the dim light of dusk. "If those shadows do come, you won't be alone. You have built a life here, and I will stand beside you." As dusk settled in, enveloping them in a gentle embrace, Rosa resolved to prepare for any storm that approached. Together, they would weave the fabric of their reality and weather whatever came their way. As the days turned into chilly nights, the leaves transformed into fiery colors and began to blanket the ground. With the harvest complete, they set about preparing for winter, reinforcing the cabin against the cold winds that swept down from the peaks. Each task they accomplished together deepened their bond, cutting firewood, repairing the roof, fortifying their shelter against the harshness of the season ahead. It was in these moments they fostered trust, a bond reaffirmed through shared labor and commitment. One evening, as they replenished the woodpile, an early snowfall dusted the ground, covering the earth in a shimmering white blanket. Rosa burst into laughter, her eyes wide with wonder as she caught snowflakes on her tongue. "Look at it, Lorenzo. It's so beautiful." He chuckled, shaking his head. "You've retained a childlike wonder. It's a gift," he teased, throwing a snowball that caught her off guard, making her squeal in surprise. Joy flooded her spirit as they played beneath the flakes, laughter mingling with the crisp air. For a moment, even shadows slipped away. Later, as they settled by the fire, warmth enveloped them like a cocoon. The flickering flames synchronized with the crackle of the logs, shadows dancing against the walls, crafting familiar shapes that told stories of their hearts. Lorenzo turned to Rosa, the warmth in his gaze tantalizing. "I've never met anyone who looks at life quite like you do. You breathe beauty into everything you touch." Her heart fluttered at his words, and she felt a warmth bloom within her chest, taking root in the tenderness of his gaze. "I think it's because you've shown me how. You helped break down those walls of doubt that kept me locked away," she confessed, lips curving into a tender smile. "Perhaps we've both changed in each other's presence," he mused, eyes sparkling with emotion. "We learn from one another, nurturing our hearts like the plants we grow." Their fingers intertwined, grounded by connection, hearts flourishing, minds entwined. The days continued to fade into nights as winter wove its way through the mountains. With the chill settling, Rosa found comfort in the rhythm of their lives. Yet, as the soft glow of firelight danced in their shared space, unease slithered along the edges of her heart, intertwining with a longing she had yet to voice. One particularly cold evening, after a day spent shoveling snow, she found herself staring into the flames, warmth radiating but an ache nestled deep within. She glanced at Lorenzo, who was finishing repairs on their cabin, the determination etched in his features, a fierce protector shaping their reality. But within her heart rumbled the desire to solidify their bond, to ensure her strength was not just individual, but deep-rooted in love and commitment. "Lorenzo," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I want to talk about what comes after winter, about you and me." He set the hammer down, a predatory glint in his eye as he focused intently on her. "What's on your mind?" Taking a deep breath, Rosa steeled her resolve, the urgency growing. I want to build a life with you. When the snow melts and the world awakens again, I want it not just to be about surviving, about the garden and the cabin, but about us." The confession hung in the air, bold yet gentle, like the flicker of the flames casting shadows against the walls. Lorenzo's eyes sparkled, and there was a flicker of surprise amidst profound understanding. "I can't promise you perfection," she continued, her voice steady now with determination. "But I wish to create something that transcends anything either of us has known before, something built on trust and honesty. You mean so much to me, Lorenzo." His breath caught, a silence stretching between them before he finally responded, his words deliberate and powerful. "You have no idea how long I've hoped to hear that. I've tried to build up defenses over the years, Rosa. But you've broken through those walls with your brilliance and your warmth. I want a future with you. their gazes locked, hearts entwined in that moment of understanding. "Then let's embrace this together, forging our path, whatever that may look like, rooted in love," Rosa declared, her voice steady, heart ablaze with the brilliance of possibility. Just then, the door swung open, a gust of cold air sweeping in, sending shadows flickering across the walls. Startled, they turned to find a figure standing in the doorway. It was a stranger, a rugged man, his face weathered by years spent in the elements, and a surprised look plastered across his features. "Sorry to intrude," he called, shaking snow from his coat. "Name's Samuel. I heard there are warm hearts in this cabin, seeking connection." Rosa's heart raced as she locked eyes with Lorenzo, uncertainty rippling through her. Who was this man? And what did his presence mean for the life they had begun to forge? "Come in," Lorenzo called out, injecting authority into the unexpected moment. As Samuel stepped in, the flickering firelight revealed a mix of discomfort and curiosity beneath the stranger's rugged exterior. "Are you lost?" Rosa asked, curiosity mingling with caution as she stepped forward. "Not lost, just looking for a little warmth and maybe a place to tell my story," he replied, his voice gruff yet genuine. "Heard you two were the brightest stars in these mountains, and I could use some good company." Lorenzo exchanged a quick glance with Rosa, carefully gauging the man before extending a hand. "We can share a meal and some tales by the fire. Come, take a seat." As Samuel settled into a chair by the flames, Rosa felt a tingle of apprehension. What would this new presence mean for them? Yet deep down, the warmth of possibility ignited her spirit in ways she hadn't expected. Every stranger brought new stories, new connections, every meeting an opportunity for growth she was beginning to embrace. That evening, they shared their tales, the fire crackling along with laughter and camaraderie. Amid the shadows dancing against the walls, Rosa felt more alive than ever, surrounded by the warmth of new possibilities. Even the shadows of what awaited nestled just behind the flames of the fire. As the night wore on, their shared laughter echoed through the cabin amid the scents of freshly cooked stew and baked bread, twining into the structure's very bones, serving as a reminder that together they could face even the most unpredictable challenges that lay ahead. With a newfound sense of hope threading through the darkness, Rosa breathed deeply, strengthened by the spirit of the company around her. It would take courage to embrace the life waiting beyond the horizon, but she was no longer afraid, not with Lorenzo at her side. Spring and renewal awaited them, and with that spring came the promise of solidified bonds, an adventure awaiting in the very fibers of existence, ready to bloom like the wildflowers that thrived across the vast, open fields. Days turned into weeks, and as winter cloaked the mountains in its white embrace, Rosa and Lorenzo thrived together. Their lives danced along balance beams of hope and survival, entwined in each other like the ivy climbing the walls of their cabin. Snowfall brought serenity and a semblance of isolation, yet it also deepened their commitment to forge a bond neither had anticipated. "What a world we live in," Rosa said one afternoon, staring through the frosted window as flakes spun like tiny fairies, swirling and twirling before settling in a silent carpet outside. "It's almost like nature reminds us to slow down." Lorenzo, busy stoking the fire in the hearth, glanced up at her with a smile, eyes warm and alive. "Maybe it does, or maybe it just gives us a reason to stay close." As she turned back to him, the flame's glow flickered over his chiseled features, and she felt a flutter of warmth radiate in her chest. Their lives had become a tapestry woven with shared experiences, trials, and laughter. Yet shadows cast by the past were never far behind. Every creak in the cabin and gust of chilling wind brought with it the ghosts of Rosa's early life, memories she wished to bury, but knew she could not escape. With each snowfall, her resolve to confront these shadows grew stronger. That evening, Cassandra, a neighbor and friend, dropped by with her 2 children. The cabin quickly filled with the vibrant energy of laughter and chatter, providing a welcome distraction from the colder thoughts in Rosa's mind. "Rosa, help me with this," Cassandra called, carrying a basket of baked goods. "These are too heavy for me. You'll love them." Rosa rushed over, a smile illuminating her face as she helped unpack the basket. The sweet smell of cinnamon and apples wafted through the cabin, wrapping around them like a warm embrace. "Those look divine," Rosa exclaimed as she grabbed a soft biscuit from the basket. The first bite sent her taste buds reeling. Pleasure mixed with nostalgia flooded her senses as memories of joyful moments spent with her late mother returned. "Do you think there will be a dance in spring?" asked one of the children, peering at Lorenzo with bright eyes full of wonder. "The grown-ups always dance on the longest night of the year. Will there be music when the flowers bloom?" "Absolutely," Lorenzo replied, kneeling to meet the children's gaze, his kindness stealing the breath from Rosa's lungs, making her heart surge. "We'll have music, food, and lots of fun. It'll be our own celebration of life." As laughter and chatter rang throughout the cozy cabin, the children's smiles ignited a glimmer of hope in Rosa's heart, a certainty creeping in that life indeed continued to flourish despite past pains. But beneath the joviality, a whispering dread grew inside her, persistent like the cold winds outside. What if he returns? She thought, reflecting on the man she had once wished never to see again. The indecision hung like frost on shining leaves, giving her no warmth, only anxiety. Weeks passed, and the winter hardened its grip, with snow falling incessantly and the sun too often hidden behind gray clouds. During this time, Rosa devoted herself to the land, helping Lorenzo with outdoor chores and tending to their growing livestock, all the while trying to stave off the icy fingers of fear that threatened to creep back into her heart. One biting cold morning as they fed the animals outside, a heavy silence settled over the land, broken only by the muffled crunch of fresh snow beneath their boots. Rosa felt her heartbeat synchronize with the stillness around them, a vibrant pulse that drowned out her anxiety. For a moment, all was right in the world. "Tell me something." Lorenzo broke the silence, curiosity dancing in his eyes. "If you could choose any life, any path, without the shadows following you, what would it look like?" A shiver ran through her, both from the cold and the question. But as she thought of the answer, warmth flared within her heart. "I don't think I'd change anything," she finally said, the truth spilling from her lips like sunlight through the trees. "Everything I've gone through led me to this moment. I want to build a life rooted in love, in this land, alongside you." His expression melted into something deeper, a blend of admiration and resolve. "Then whatever shadows try to creep back in, we'll face them together. You're not just surviving, you're living, and so am I." The declaration hung in the air, heavy yet full of promise. And despite the fear that had lingered longer than she would have liked, Rosa felt the tightness in her chest slowly release. Somehow, being seen for who she had become made all the difference. But as if the universe was orchestrating fate, a blur of dark clouds rolled in that very day, casting gloom over the hills. By late afternoon, the world around them turned disquietingly quiet, foreboding, with an unsettling heaviness in the air that made Rosa's skin prickle. "Something doesn't feel right," she murmured as they stood at the threshold of their cabin. Wind howled in the distance, uprooting treetops and sending wild gusts through the air like warnings. "Let's keep close tonight," Lorenzo said, a determined intensity gripping his features. "If there's trouble on the way, we need to be ready." That evening they gathered as a family near the fire, a protective bubble shielding them from the brewing chaos outside. Samuel joined them after receiving word from a nearby homestead. He settled himself by the hearth, quickly matching their apprehensive energy. "Strange rumors are swirling," he started, lowering his voice as if the shadows outside might listen. "I overheard talk of a man from town who's searching for something, or someone. He might have connections to the past we've all tried to bury." A chill coursed through Rosa, her body frozen in place. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just be careful," Samuel urged, scanning their expressions. "There's talk of justice being sought, whether sworn or otherwise. It's important to prepare ourselves for anything." "Rosa!" Lorenzo turned sharply toward her, the concern evident in his eyes. "You don't have to go outside. We'll protect you, no matter what." Tension hung thick in the air, and the once warm cabin felt suddenly too small under the weight of unspoken fears. Rosa shook her head, determination ignited. "No, I'm not running. I'll face whatever is out there. I won't let my past determine my future any longer." They spent the evening encircled by one another, sharing stories of hope and resilience, laughter straining against the tightening fear. The warmth of their camaraderie held its own against the growing storm outside, wrapping them in a shared understanding. But as the wind howled and snow fell heavier through the night, Rosa felt the creeping sensation of eyes on her, an echo from her past reaching toward her in the shadows. The night was long, and as the fire crackled on, the tension stood vigilant in the air, every creak of the cabin, every gust of wind whispering of threats to come. Rosa knew that come dawn, she would have to confront her past. No matter how fierce the storm, she had made a promise, to herself, to Lorenzo, and all that they were building together. With deep breaths, she bolstered her resolve, gripping her newfound strength, the warmth of community, the connectiveness of love, and the undeniable spirit buried in the heart of the mountains. And as the storm carried on outside, Rosa vowed she would face whatever darkness came, ready to reclaim the life she had fought so hard to create. As dawn broke, the snow-covered landscape sparkled under the piercing sunlight, a serene contrast to the chaotic night that had just passed. Rosa pulled herself from the warmth of her dreams, the remnants of fear still clinging to her. Today would be the day she faced whatever shadows loomed on the horizon. "Rosa!" Lorenzo's voice broke through her reverie, a soft yet firm reminder that she didn't have to face it alone. He stood beside her, his tall frame casting a reassuring shadow. "You ready for today?" Taking a deep breath, she turned to him, her determination shimmering like the light bouncing off the snow. "I'm ready," she replied, firm and resolute. "I won't let my past dictate my future any longer." Lorenzo's trusting smile warmed her heart. "We're in this together, remember?" With their hands joined, they donned their winter gear, bundling against the biting cold as they ventured toward the trading post, the focal point of their tight-knit community, where they had to confront the whispers of her past. As they walked through the crisp air, each crunch of snow beneath their boots echoed Rosa's racing heart. But she kept her resolve close, a shield against the anxiety clawing at her insides. The scent of wood smoke and fresh bread wafted through the post as they entered, but Rosa sensed a heaviness in the atmosphere, palpable as townsfolk exchanged wary glances. Amid the chatter, the door swung open abruptly, revealing the silhouette of a man, wrapped in a heavy coat and shadowed by the brightness outside. Rosa's breath caught in her throat as she recognized him, the man they had dreaded. He stepped into the room, and a hush fell over the crowd like a suffocating blanket. "Rosa," he uttered, his voice low and gravelly, sending chills spiraling down her spine. "I've been looking for you." The fear that threatened to pull her back was met by a surge of defiance. Gathering her strength, Rosa stepped forward, her voice unwavering. "You have no business here." Lorenzo moved closer to her, an unspoken promise of loyalty imbued in his stance. "Leave her alone," he said firmly, but the man did not flinch, instead advancing a step. "What I want is what you owe me, Rosa," he hissed, his sinister eyes glinting in the light. "You think you can bury your past? It comes for you inevitably." "No!" Rosa retorted, a tremor of adrenaline fueling her courage. "You don't get to control me anymore." The tension in the room mounted, a thick energy hanging heavily in the air. People gathered closer, their concern for Rosa palpable. She straightened her back, taking in the support surrounding her. "I've built a new life. I refuse to be intimidated by you." "Those who ignore their past never escape it," he sneered, his confidence wavering as the crowd began to murmur. "That's where you're wrong," she replied, voice steady and strong. "I embrace it. My scars tell my story, but they do not define me. You will not take me away from the life I have fought to create." As she spoke, the townsfolk shifted, affirming her courage. "We all stand with you, Rosa," one of her neighbors declared. "You're home now." The realization of solidarity ignited a fire within her, flames of unity rising to push back the shadows that threatened. The man's bravado faltered, his expression turning to confusion as he sized up the growing chorus of support. "You think this is over?" he spat, rage spilling from his lips. "I'll come back for what's mine." "The only thing you're taking is the door," Rosa replied, her voice ringing with an empowered finality. He hesitated for a moment, glancing around at the unified front against him. Then, with a snarl, he turned and stormed out, slamming the door with force that echoed the silence left behind. As relief washed over the gathered townsfolk, Rosa blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the support she never fully realized surrounded her. She felt Lorenzo's hand intertwining with hers, a silent promise that they would face whatever came next together. "That was powerful," Lorenzo whispered as the murmurs of the crowd began to rise again, confident voices blending into a song of resilience. "Thank you all," Rosa spoke up, lifting her chin as she faced those who had stood by her side. "I couldn't have done that alone." The atmosphere shifted, a tangible warmth filling the space, light breaking through the winter's chill. They left the trading post hand in hand, ushered forward by their friends, who offered encouraging nods, smiles, and murmured words of kindness. As they walked toward their cabin, the journey felt different, renewed by the sunlight, but even more so by the strength of unity that twinkled in their eyes. The shadows of her past loomed less large, eclipsed by bright and hopeful connections. Spring will come, Rosa said, her voice hopeful. With it, new blooms and fresh chances. Lorenzo squeezed her hand gently, mirroring the warmth blossoming in her heart. And we'll be ready for them together. With each step, Rosa cast aside the lingering fears, knowing she didn't just survive, she thrived in community. Today was not just about confrontation. It was the dawning of a new chapter, an affirmation that the darkness could be faced if one had the strength of love behind them. Standing on the threshold of their cabin, she glanced back toward the horizon, triumphant and relieved. They would navigate whatever else awaited on the path together, every storm, every shadow, hand in hand, stronger than before.